In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at the plate production feature. We're going to start by designing a simple conference badge template like the one that you can see on the screen currently. And this will contain a simple company logo field, a name field, and a department field. And then I'm going to show you how you can apply some toolpaths to it. And then we can use the plate production tool to import a CSV file from Microsoft Excel to create multiple badges automatically. This will contain all of the details and toolpaths applied like the one that you can see on the screen currently. But first, to do that, let's have a look at closing out this file so we can create a brand new file. So let's go up to File and Close. Let's go to create a new file. So let's click on Create a New File on the top left. And this job is a single-sided job with a width of 12 inches, a height of 8 inches, a thickness of 0.125 inches or 1/8 of an inch. The Z0 is off the material surface and our XY dating position is in the bottom left. So let's click OK to set up our file. And the first thing we want to do is make our conference badge, because that will be the badge that we use to make a template of and to make many more badges off using plate production tool later. So first things first, we need a rectangle. Let's pop over to the 3D view and let's make the outline of our badge. So let's go onto the Draw Rectangle tool under Create Vectors here. And I want a radius external corner. I want it to be 0.25 inches. I want the width of the badge to be 2.5 inches and I want the height to be 2 inches. So I'm going to click on the middle here of the worksheet and you'll see it will create that size badge or the rectangle. And you'll notice that when I hover my mouse over these anchors here, I get different options to change the size and indeed manipulate the size if I want to on the fly in the 3D view. But for now, I just want to move this down to the bottom left-hand corner. So now I want to have a think about adding in content into my badge here. Now I want to start with the Vectric logo. Now that could be something that has been designed outside of the software. So it could have been something designed in an external package. It could be a vector that has been sent to you from elsewhere. So to import that type of data, what we can do is we can go up to the top left of the software here under File Operations and click on Import a Bitmap or Vectors from a file into current job. So let's click on that, and I'm going to use this file here called Vectric. It's an EPS file. I'm just going to double left mouse click that, and you'll notice it has imported some vectors. Now, crucially, notice the dashed line in pink here. That indicates that these vectors are all separate vectors, so they're not grouped together. So to do that, because I don't want to move these vectors individually, let's right mouse click them while they're selected, and we're going to choose the group option to group that all together. And you notice now the Vectric logo is one solid line for the vectors because it is now grouped. So just going to use the snapping options here to get that as central as I can, and I'm pretty happy with that placement. So now we can have a look at some of the other areas of the badge that we want to now add in. Okay, so now I'm going to have a think about my name and department variables for my badge. I need to put the name here and the department as well, and what I need for that is some text in a box. Now, we can use these to automatically populate the name and department from a file that we will import later. So let's have a look at how we create the fields for it first. So let's go into the Draw Text tool. And you'll notice I've got two options. I've got text and text in a box. Now the difference is quite obvious, I'm sure, to some of you, but for those of you who don't know, if you just draw text, it will just be text freeform on the worksheet here, whereas text within a box is text constrained to the box itself that you selected. Now, in this case, we actually want to use text in a box. And the reason is because if we actually go ahead and put the text only, you may have a problem where you have a much longer name that doesn't fit within the confines of our badge space. So that's why text in a box comes in useful, because you can assign a box and keep the text within the bounds of that box. So it's nice and neat. So let's make that box first to put the text into. So again, we'll go up to our Draw Rectangle tool, and I'm just going to left mouse click on the badge area here, and I'm just going to drag out a rectangle, and let's just resize that just a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. Fantastic. And while it's selective, I will drag it and snap it to the middle. Great. And then I can hold Shift and Control, and we can drag out another copy of this rectangle below. And holding Control will make a copy of that vector, so you can pop that just below as well. And if you want to check the snapping of that, you can do, so you can see if you want to get it central, you can do that. And there we are, lovely. So that is our boxes made for our name and department fields. Now let's look at actually populating these variables for the plate production tool to pick up later. So let's select our top box here. I'm going to go over to the create text tool, and we're going to use text in a box. So you'll notice that when I've got text in a box selected, it knows the boundaries of the box here. So it's got the width of 2.15 and the height of 0.4. So it's automatically picked it up from the box selection there. Now, what we need to do to tell the plate production tool to pick this up as a variable, we need to put 2 exclamation marks at the front and at the back end of our variable. Now, our first one's going to be name. So let's put in name and then double exclamation marks at the end again. Now, this time I'm actually going to use a single line font. I want it to be quite prominent. Now, I want to use Helvetica, but you can see the Helvetica 1 line is not that thick. So I'm going to go for the 3 version there, much thicker, much more prominent. And so that is our name variable assigned there. And then what we can do is select our second box where we want to put in the department field. So we want department in this one. Now, I don't want that text to be as prominent. So let's use Helvetica 1 there. There you go, much more in line. So you can see the name nice and clear and the department less prominent, but very clear underneath that. Okay, so we can close out that form now. So we've got our badge set up for the most part to use with our plate production tool later. And of course, at this stage, if you want to make any changes or if you want to play around with any of the alignment, you can do so at this stage. But we want to have a look at now creating some toolpaths for this badge, because then what we can do is use those toolpaths to populate the toolpaths for the rest of the badges using the plate production tool, which will save us a lot of time. So to do that, let's also have a look at populating the material that we want to use in this particular case. Okay, so what we can do to facilitate looking at material and toolpaths is go up to the top left and click on this button here to switch to the toolpath menu. And when we're across, one thing I need to note here is that I can actually get rid of these rectangles. We don't need these anymore because we have designed with them. We've got our fields ready to go, our text, so we can delete those, get rid of those. And we can pop up to the profile toolpath, because the first toolpath I'm going to do is to cut out this badge. So let's click on the profile toolpath with our vector selected. Now for the cut depth, I actually want to do the full thickness. And if you don't remember what that is, you can just press Z equals, and the software will take this value from the thickness you entered earlier in your job setup. So if you ever forget, don't worry, you can press Z equals and the software will tell you what that thickness is if you want to cut through your full thickness of material, which I do in this case. For the tool, I'm going to use my engraving bit. Now this is safe and sound for my machine, but do make sure you double check these settings with your machine before applying them. So I'm going to click select, and I want to cut on the outside right. And then I want to add some tabs to the toolpath. Now, a couple of things I need to make a note of here. I know I want my length to be 0.1, but the thickness, I actually need a third of this. I need a third of an eighth of an inch, or a third of the thickness of my material. How do I work that out? Well, the software again can do that for you. So if you click on Z on the keyboard, if you type Z /3, so that is Z divided by 3, so that's the thickness divided by 3 equals 0.0416. So the software can work that out for you. Now I'm just going to tile my views over here because I'm going to actually use the 2D view to add in my tabs. So if I click on Edit Tabs, and you can ask the software to add the tabs automatically for you by number, but I'm actually going to add them in manually myself. So you can see on my mouse pointer in the 2D view here, you notice I get a tab appear with a little cross, and that indicates where I can put a tab. You see the check mark appears where I can add a tab in, so I'll pop one there, and I'll pop one on the other side, and again an X appears if you need to remove those ever. But I'm happy with those placements, so I'll close out that for now, and then I'll go to the bottom of that form to give it a name. So let's call this cutout, nice and clear, and we can click on calculate, and you'll see in the 3D view I've now got my toolpath. Let's pop up to the top here and set this to maximize the 3D view again, because we're going to have a look at the toolpath. So I'm just going to right mouse click while holding control, drag this into view. And on the preview form, you notice I have this option here to edit material. Now you notice that earlier I mentioned I was going to cut this out of acrylic. Well, this is the place you can change your material if you wanted to get a preview of that. So let's just say you're working a brass, for example, or bronze, or gold satin. Indeed, you could change that up here into those different materials so you can get an idea of what it might look like in that material. For now, though, I want to keep it on Canadian maple, and I'm going to have the preview animated and drawn so I can show you what the toolpath looks like with the tabs on it. So you'll notice that the engraving bit is now going around the perimeter of the badge here. I'll just speed that up a little bit so we can see that cutout. And there we are, you can see the tabs either side there, holding that in place for us safely so we can remove that safely from the machine after we've cut that badge out. Now I'll just pop this back onto top view. I'll turn the vectors back on the 3D view with this button here in the top left. And what we can do now is have a look at creating some toolpaths for our name and department fields. So I'm going to close out the preview for the moment, and I'm just going to select our name field and hold shift and select our department field. And this time we're going to use the quick engrave toolpath. So let's click on that. Now you notice at the top of the form right away we have a diamond drag bit. Let me just click on select on that. And this is safe and appropriate for my machine, but the cool thing about and the useful thing about diamond drags is that they're spring loaded, so they can actually cut over uneven surfaces. And this is the tool I want to use in this case, so I'm happy with these settings. Again, double check these are safe and sound for your machine. But in this case I'm happy, so I can click select. And now I need to put a pressure for it to, or depth or pressure to cut to. So I need to put 0.1 in this case, so not too deep. And I need to choose if I want to do an outline or fill. Now the fill option isn't available here because we're using single line text. We need to use an outline. If we were using text that was a true font type, we could use fill, but in this case it's single line, so I'll use outline. And I'm just going to give this one a name, so we will call this one text, and I can click on calculate. So we can see now in the 3D view that the toolpath is ready to preview. You can see the toolpath is there. So let's click on preview toolpath. Wonderful, you can see the name and the department there, nice and clear on our badge. So the last thing for us to do is to have a look at creating a toolpath for the Vectric text. So let's turn the vectors back on the top left here with the 3D view. And we're going to select our Vectric text, and we're going to go back up to the quick engrave toolpath. And this time I'm actually going to choose the fill option with a step over of 0.025. I'm not going to use an offset, but I will use a hatch. And I won't use a crosshatch, but I will use an angle of 45 degrees. That's the one I prefer here. And in this case, I will call this one Vectric text. And we can hit calculate. And now let's have a look at what that toolpath looks like. So if I click on preview toolpaths, wonderful, really lovely hatch effect there. And that is our badge template ready to go. So with that all finished, what we can do is reset the preview, click on close, come back up and turn the vectors on, and we'll pop back across to the design menu because we're now going to have a look at using the plate production tool. So what we can do is select all our vectors. I'm actually going to pop the toolpath menu open here and pin it because this will be just important in a moment because we'll see what happens when we actually use a plate production tool in conjunction with the toolpaths on the right hand side here. So we'll open the plate production tool up. So right away you can see that when the form is open you're presented with multiple options. Let's start on the left hand side here. So the mode is sheets or layers. Now the difference between the two is, let's say you have so many of these badges that they do not fit onto one sheet. Well, with the sheets option what can happen is, if let's say you have 25 of these and all 25 don't fit on one sheet when you create them. Well, what will happen is the software will assign a new sheet with the extra badges onto that sheet, and indeed if they need to go to another sheet they will also go to another sheet. And the same applies for layers. So if you choose to organize your files by layers instead of sheets, you can have these badges put onto multiple layers, and then you can activate those layers when it comes to toolpathing, and you can save those out. In this particular example I would like to use sheets, and underneath you can see the sheet size. Now that's just been picked up from the job setup. You notice at the start of the video I made my size of sheet is 12 by 8. And similarly, the plate size has been picked up by the software, which is 2.5 by 2. And if you recall, that is the size of the rectangle that we made for this badge down here. And because we selected this badge, it's been picked up by the software. Underneath that, we have something called the sheet margins, which is a margin around the sheet, so around your badges. And I've gone for an equal margin here of 0.25. But if you wanted to, you can set individual margin values here as well. So you could assign these separately if you wanted to. But for now, I'm going to keep these as equal. And then underneath that, we have the spacing. Now the spacing you can see here is horizontal. So we've got the right edge of a badge to the left edge of another badge. And then we have the space from the top edge of a badge to the bottom edge of another badge. So this is the space vertically and horizontally between your badges, so you can space them out. In this case, I've gone for 0.125. Now under that we have the number of plates. Now in X I can see I can have 4, and in Y I can have 3, and the software is automatically calculated this for me because I've got the auto calculate option on. Now if I turn that off, I can actually assign this manually if I want to, but I want the software to work out how many I can fit on this sheet, so I will keep that option on for now. And then we have the option to create toolpaths, and what this will do is it will utilize the toolpaths that we've got over here to create the toolpathing for the various badges we will have on this sheet. So now let's have a look at the right side of our form. So we've got the option for data to engrave. So we can see it has a separator, which is a comma, tab, semicolon, or space. In this case, I had already exported a Excel spreadsheet as a CSV file or a comma separated value file. So in this case, I'll need to use a comma. And let's bring that file in so we can have a look at it. So if I put import from file, and we'll just double left mouse click that to bring it in. And you can see here I've got various fields that have been picked up from that CSV file, but crucially it is separated by a comma, which is why I needed to use a comma separator. And it's crucial that you match the separator to the file that you are bringing in, because if I were to use tabs, for example, here, and it's a comma separated file, then this would just be recognized as one long string of text, which is not what we want. We want the separation. So in this case, I'm using comma. And you can see here that there's an option called first row is column names. Now the first row is column names refers to the column names here. So you can see that we've got first name, surname, department, age, and sex. And if we look beneath that, you will see that we've got a first name of Brian, a surname of Dent, a department of product development, an age of 24, and a sex of male. So they line up. So this is what the software is checking for, is that the first row is indeed the column names, and the subsequent information below that is the data for those columns. And then we have the variable assignment. Now, you'll notice the variable names have been picked up here as department and name. Now, if you recall earlier when we were making our text, we specifically put the double exclamation mark either side of our text. And that's because we wanted the software to pick it up as a variable, which it has in this case. So let's look at how we can interact with these and use these. So if I click on department, you notice I now get a drop down box underneath, and I want to assign to that one department. So that's absolutely perfect, because I want the department field to respect the department field from this form data. And if I go to the name value, if I click on name, I indeed want it to be the first name, not the surname. I would like the first name on the badge. So again, that'll be pulling the first name from this field here and below. And then what we can do is have a look at actually calculating this to see what this will look like. So if I click calculate, we can see what's going to happen. Now you'll notice on the right hand side of the software here, I've got S1 cutout, S1 text, S1 Vectric text. So it's the same toolpath that we had before, except we've got the S1 in front of it. And what does that relate to? Well, that actually relates to currently the sheet that it's on. So that's sheet 1. And if I just close this out for just a moment, and then if I go into the 2D view, you can see I've got an extra sheet where the extra badge is spilled over onto, and that is called plates 2. But you'll also notice the toolpaths have been reflected here with S2 in front of that. So it's already named for you. So it's nice and clear when you go to actually cut these out on the machine itself, which sheet you're working on, which toolpaths that you will be cutting on for those badges. And then of course, if you come back to the 3D view here, you'll notice that the border or the margin around the edge here is 0.25. So that's been respected all the way around. And you can see in between, our spacing has also been respected of 0.125. So that's wonderful. That's all been applied there as well. Now, what we can also do is we pop over to the right hand side here and change this drop down list for the toolpaths to all sheets. You'll now see every single sheet displayed, but crucially you'll notice that in the lighter grey are the ones that are active and the darker grey are the ones that are not active. So we're on the plate 1 sheet at the moment, which is why the S1 toolpaths look active and the other ones do not. But you can also still select all the other toolpaths here. You can actually see them overlapping here in the bottom for the extra toolpaths there. You can see for the second sheet and indeed the original one we had made earlier to help populate our toolpaths for our sheets. And what we can also do is if we go up to the top here and we've got our sheets drop down, we can change sheets here as well. So I can go to sheet 2 and to sheet 1. And similarly, if you had chosen the option to do layers, you could change the layer option here as well. So you could activate the layer for layer 1 and indeed the second layer where the badge is spilled over to as well. So at this stage, we can look at actually saving out our toolpath. So what I'm going to do is select the ones for sheet 1 and for sheet 2. And I'm going to go to the Save Toolpath option, and I'm going to select my post processor, and this is the right one for my machine currently, so double check this when you go to do it for your machine. I'm going to do visible toolpaths to multiple files. I'll group them where possible if they're using the same tool, and I can then save this toolpath out. So in this case, I'm going to call this one as badges. So I'll call this badges and click save. So that's my toolpath now saved out, ready for me to take to the machine. And similarly, we can also save this file so we can use this later on. So we can come up to File, Save As, and I will call this one Plate Production and Badges, so we know which ones it's for, and I can use that later. So I've got that ready to use later on if I ever need to. And that concludes our tutorial on how to use the plate production tool. I hope it was very helpful, and of course we will see you in the next video.